Welcome to the Observeday podcast, the show where we celebrate the days that matter. From holidays to meaningful observances, we bring you inspiring conversations, stories, and ideas to make each day count. Whether it's raising awareness, learning something new, or simply sparking joy, this is your space to explore the calendar in a whole new way. I'm your host, Wisdom Okonkwo, and I'm excited to share today's observance with you. Let's dive in. Today we're joined by Swami Nityananda, a spiritual teacher, author, and longtime professor of literature whose life has been shaped by both sacred texts and worldly stories. Before guiding people through meditation and non-dual awareness, she spent over 25 years teaching American and world literature, helping students discover how words can open inner and outer worlds. On Worldbook Day, her journey offers a rare bridge between reading as an intellectual practice and reading as a spiritual one. This conversation isn't just about books we love, but about how reading forms attention, empathy, and awareness, and why stories still matter deeply in a distracted, fast-moving world. Welcome to the podcast, Swami.
Wisdom, thank you so much for the warmth of your welcome. I love your intro. I'm excited to talk with you.
Thank you. That makes the two of us. When you think about World Book Day, what's a moment from your own life when a book stopped being just reading and became something that genuinely changed how you saw yourself for all the world?
It's a really interesting question. So I would say for myself and for many of the students with whom I talked about this book, the narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass was a life-changing book. And I think that one of the reasons why, and I'll just say really briefly for listeners who don't know, Frederick Douglass was born into slavery. He was born an enslaved human in Maryland, and he freed himself inwardly. So he shares that his earliest awareness is that he was born to be free. And so he freed himself first inwardly, and then he freed himself outwardly. And this is a book, literally, students would stop me like years later, and they would say, Dr. Ellis, everyone has to read this book because it helps everyone understand that each human has this innate awareness. We're born with it. Even if we're born into a situation of injustice or oppression, we have an awareness of our own dignity. We have an awareness of our own expansiveness, our own freedom of spirit, our own intelligence, our own ability to learn. And so Frederick Douglass educated himself, freed himself inwardly, freed himself outwardly. And then he was so brave because in the face of danger that he would be losing his life or losing his freedom, he kept telling his story. And so he changed hearts and he changed minds and he actually changed this country because he, in the face of danger, was willing to stand up and to tell the story. And the story was just the truth, which is what I've shared. I've shared it in brief, but I would just say for any listener, if you have not read Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass, it's a heart-wrenching, heart-opening story. Like one of my students said, this story has all the feels. So it's a very emotional story. Brilliant. Absolutely a magnificent, what's the right way to put that? Like one of the most eloquent things written in the English language as well. And then it just sort of like stops you in your tracks and helps you, I think, as well, be aware of your own earliest awareness. So when you read about Frederick Douglass and the way that he knew from the very beginning, I'm born to be free, it helps you remember your own earliest awareness as well. So I think it's kind of life enhancing for every reader.
Well, thank you for that recommendation, Swami. Growing up and later teaching literature, how did reading first shape your inner life? Not just your education of becoming a professor. Of course, there was a lot of reading there. The profession was literature, which has to do with reading a lot of books. But before all that, right, how did it reshape how you saw the world?
Thank you for asking. I'm smiling because I just remember I became a professor just for love of it because I loved reading. And so that was my case from being a kid. I loved books. I loved reading. And I would go to the library. My parents would take me once a week. I would check out as many books as I could. I don't remember what the limit is, but I would check out the limit. And then I would read those books and then I would go back the next week and I would check out the limit again. And so I just loved, I think, I'm trying to remember if I put it into words, it was like, I loved the curiosity of it. I loved being able to learn about other lives and other people and other cultures and other countries and other faiths, other backgrounds. you learn about, like you were talking about empathy. I think you learn, like you can live almost like you feel like you've lived lifetimes sometimes when you read a book that particularly touches
Yeah.
you or moves you. So I had that like from the very beginning. I was just lucky. I really, really loved books. And I know a lot of people say that books kind of like opened the world to them. And so I would say that's true for me as well. That was one of the ways that I connected with the world. And it's awesome to talk with you in Nigeria. I love talking with people around the world. And I think books have always been kind of a conversation with that.
Oh, was there you recommended the book about Frederick Douglass? I'm curious in the timeline of things. How far into uh, did you get to read that book? Was it earlier when you were young, or when you started teaching?
So that's an interesting one. That I read, I'm trying to think. I read that as a professor for the first time, and then I fell in love with it, and I was like, every human would benefit from this book.
Yeah,
So definitely, like my students would say, everyone in this country, the United States, needs to read this book. But I would say every human benefits from reading this book, and so it
yeah.
was just so much fun to be able to share that with students. And I would also say it's not a super long book. So I know some listeners are probably interested in like what's a engaging book, but it's not too long. So it's not like massive hundreds of pages as well. Full respect to people who like hundreds of pages long books. I also like those as well. But Frederick Douglass, you can sit down and it really keeps you moving. There's a lot of action in it, and
Oh,
there's like inner action and outer action as well.
I'm curious. How did your relationship with books change as you moved from academia into spiritual leadership?
Okay, good question. So one of the things that I would say, so I teach yoga philosophy, I teach meditation in the yogic tradition. And
Okay.
in the yogic tradition, um, there's an acknowledgement that you can learn important ideas from books. And yoga philosophy says what really matters is the truth that you live. And so
Mm,
yoga philosophy says don't acquire a bunch of concepts. And one, one of the things that yogis say is a donkey can carry a library around on its back, but it's still an ass. so, so they're basically saying like,
that's a good
don't.
one.
They're saying like,
I'm gonna
don't
use
consider
it.
yourself
Who, I, who would I give credit to when I use it? Because I'm thinking of a
Swami
short I made.
Premananda. Swami
Swami.
Premananda.
Why
Swami
do you keep saying
Premananda.
I thought it's N. I said
So I'm Swami Nityananda, and then my
okay.
teacher is Swami Shankarananda,
What are the
and
odds?
his teacher is Swami Premananda, and so it's
Wait,
he who said that.
wait. I'm curious. Is Swami a name or it's like Swami a title? Help
It's a
me out.
title. Yeah,
Oh, when I said
it's a
Swami, that's not like that's not your first name.
right. So Swami is like I'm trying to think. It's like teacher, right? Like
Okay,
it's
like
like a teacher.
sensei,
Yes,
sensei. Yeah.
exactly. Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes.
Then
Exactly.
sensei. Then Nityananda is your name.
Yep.
Okay,
Exactly.
okay, okay, okay,
Yeah.
okay. So it's your
Yeah, you
teacher.
got
Okay, well, I said I'll credit you for crediting your teacher. I say, oh yeah, that's what I'll do. I said my guest Swami Nityananda said the our teacher talked about this quote, and people can go find out who your teacher is.
perfect.
Yeah,
Yeah, so and the reason why I think it is so funny and I like humor, but the truth of it is it's saying don't acquire concepts and think it makes you better than anybody else. And it's also saying like the concept becomes meaningful if you live it, and it's not meaningful unless you're living it, right? And so I think
yeah,
people of all traditions can get behind that truth, right? Like truth is what we live, and it comes to life within us when we do live it. And so I would say that's one thing that spiritual teachings and spiritual books, I think all listeners kind of recognize that. Like there's an inner knowing when you hear the truth, you're like, oh, yes, that's the truth. And then I talk with a lot of people in a lot of contexts about this, but it's one thing intellectually to say, oh, that's the truth. But to actually allow that to transform your heart and to transform your mind and to transform the way that you relate to yourself and the way that you relate to others, the way that you treat yourself, the way that you treat others, the way that you treat nature or animals or anything in life, that is where there's transformation. And so I've heard many people say, like, I understood this idea one way, when I first heard it, and now a few years have passed and I'm deeper into living it, and I'm not done. Like, I'm never going to be done living into this teaching of
Oh,
truth. And so I would say for listeners to really identify for yourselves the spiritual truths that you love the most, and then invite yourself to keep going deeper into allowing those spiritual truths to come to life in your heart and your mind, and then to come to life in how you relate and how you treat yourself and other people in the world. And that's life changing.
yeah, it is. Oh, in your daily life now, how do reading and, of course, silence coexist or inform one another?
Fantastic. So I read every day. And the first thing that I read every day is scripture. So I read the Bhagavad Gita, which is a sacred scripture in the yogic tradition. And that's pretty much like every day in the morning. I read that first thing. I also meditate. And so I like to start the day with some stillness, with some silence. And I'll just give listeners a plug, like an invitation to enjoy a little bit of silence, because Harvard recently released a study that said if you look at your phone first thing in the morning and you're looking at news and social media and things like that, that actually initiates a cascading stress response that stays active the rest of the day. And
Yeah,
so if you can give yourself a window of quiet and peace and connect with, like for me, it's the Bhagavad Gita, but for you, it's whatever you consider gives you peace and gives
yeah,
you solace and gives you strength and gives you comfort. Connect with that first and then decide, like, when do I want to look at my phone and news and social media? And what you find, I think, is you give yourself almost like this current of quiet that carries with you. It carries with you in your conversation with your family, your friends, people at work, people on the bus, like anybody that you interact with. So you're saying people who misunderstand the role of
what do
books?
people often misunderstand about the role
Misunderstand.
books play in spiritual growth and self-improvement?
This is a really good question. Like, I think, and I've seen this, and I've seen students say this I was a professor for more than 25 years, and students have told me books have changed my life. Like, students have told me books have helped me understand myself. They've helped me understand my identity. They've helped me
Yeah.
understand others. They've helped me understand others' identities. So that's the truth. And then in the yogic context, and I would say this is the truth also, I am so grateful that I had my teacher. There were things I learned face to face from my teacher, listening to my teacher, just
Yeah,
listening and almost like absorbing being in the physical presence of my teacher, like the way that my teacher sat or walked or smiled
yeah,
or interacted with other people. You can't put that in a book. And my life changed because I was able to be in the physical living presence of my teacher. And so I would also say that I love books. And I think for everyone to really, really honor that so tell me if you think I'm wrong, but I've
okay.
observed that some people kind of like being a hermit, and I would invite the hermits to come face to face and have that embodied presence contact, like I was just talking about with my teacher. So whatever community, whatever culture, whatever spirituality, whatever religion the listener is comfortable with, don't just listen online. Listening online is perfect. It's amazing. And go in person because there are things that you gain in person that you can never fit in a book. Like I could
Yeah,
write 1,000 books and I would never be able to describe how amazing my teacher was. And I'm sure every listener, you have that person in your life. Like it might be your grandma, it might be your mom, it might be your dad or your grandfather, but every listener has that person. You could write 1,000 books and you could never describe how beautiful their heart is, how incredible their smile is, how kind and wise and good they are. And so to really, I think, cultivate the human to human contact is super important. And so I think people can get kind of caught up in screens. I love screens. I have a bunch of them right here.
yeah,
They help me, right? So I'm going to keep using screens, but just day to day to have that conversation. Like yesterday, my neighbors and I had to shovel out our street because the plows didn't come. We were snowed in. And if we were going to
yeah,
go get groceries, we had to shovel ourselves. So we were all out there. There were so many people and it was joyful. It was actually so joyful just to see people and work together. And we were just working for this common good, helping everybody. And it was just joy and it was spontaneous. Nobody planned it. Nobody was like grumbling or complaining. It was just like, here we are. How can we help each other? And we shoveled the whole street. And I was
Wow.
able to go out today. And before that, we were snowed in. If we hadn't done it, I would still be snowed in.
Yeah. Wow. That's such a good story. You while you responding to that question, you did mention that you have screens, and that leads me to the next question, which is how does deep reading, spending time with a book, train attention in a way that feels increasingly rare today?
Super good question. So, one of the things, okay, so I taught students who love to read and would read, like those books that are this thick. They're like a door stopper. They're like 100 pages, 700 pages, something like that. So I taught students who would read those kinds of books, and they would just get immersed in those books, and I would see them like on campus sitting on a bench like reading the book, and you could tell they
Yeah.
were not really on the bench. They were like on
Absorbing
another planet. Yeah,
planet
exactly. So
dimension.
exactly. So I taught students like that, but then I also for sure taught students who were like, really, do I have to take this English class? And so for those students, I would say for the reluctant readers, I think that I would always choose books that would engage the mind and the heart both. That was really important to me. And then I would always choose books that gave hope. So they were honest books, like that book about Frederick Douglass. He was born an enslaved human. That's hard. And he talks about hard, oppressive things. He also provides hope. And so I would always sort of give that balance as well so that people would be able to talk about injustice, but then they would be able to talk about ways to self transform and then be able to help work toward justice as well. And so I would say that what students who came in as reluctant readers learned is that they grew. And you could see, like, in their final papers, when I would read their final papers, they were really thinking. They were really thinking about themselves ethically. They were really thinking about their own relationship and their own responsibility to other humans. They were thinking about things like, well, I was born this particular class. Like some of my students would talk about, we had food insecurity. Like over the weekend, I wouldn't know if I would have food at home. And the students became very brave about sharing all of these things. And then some other students would say, I didn't grow up that way. But they would kind of meet and gain this common ground and this mutual respect, this mutual understanding. And so I think that over the course of the semester, even reluctant readers became, I guess the word might be like enlivened and aware that literature can contain these life-changing journeys and that we were all kind of going on the journey together. And so I also want to give just so much credit and gratitude to the students because they were so brave. Like for that student who talked about, we didn't have food at home and I would be hungry over the weekend. That took so much courage for that student to talk about that at school. And I'm so grateful that that student did. And to all of the students who talked about the different kinds of challenges that they have faced, and then also the ways that they have very courageously overcome those challenges and the kind of life experience and wisdom that they gained by continuing to move forward. So there was just an incredible honesty. And the word the students used was, it was relatable. And then they also used accountable. So that they really
Yeah.
liked that the classes were relatable, but also helped them be accountable. So they wanted to grow, like they wanted to learn, they wanted to be their best selves, and they talked about how they want their friends to help them be accountable, so that their friends help them to follow through and be their best selves as well.
From your perspective as both a literature scholar and a spiritual teacher, why do humans across cultures keep returning to stories and texts?
So I was thinking when you asked that question, I was thinking about my grandma who would just tell stories, and I could sit on my grandma's couch and listen to her for hours. And
Wow.
I think she would have, I think probably many listeners have a family member like that. It might be a grandfather or an uncle or whoever it is, but she would tell stories about her parents. And so it's a way of touching, like I feel like I I touched those ancestors through her stories, and it's really important. So I really respect and honor my ancestors, and I know many listeners do as well. And I think stories are one of the ways that our ancestors still stay with us, and they keep inspiring us. Their strength stays with us, their love stays with us. Like students in my class, like I remember this student said his grandfather came to this country and literally had 40 cents in his pocket when he came to this country. And so he knows his grandfather's strength and courage and how much, I guess, like just faith in his own ability to start fresh and work really hard and build a new life in this entirely different place. And so he knows his grandfather's strength through that story. And then by telling that story, the whole class benefited as well. And so it's like this ripple effect of sharing the good, sharing inspiration, sharing joy, sharing courage. And then also my students would talk about, like, when you are able to talk about pain honestly, the way they talked about it, they said it actually divides the pain. It distributes it. So you don't feel like you're carrying it just by yourself. So if you feel like you're carrying the pain just by yourself, it can feel overwhelming, and it's like too small a container with too much pain. But if the students were talking about it, then it somehow kind of got distributed, and the bitterness of it got distributed as well. And so then just more hope, more trust, more connection, more community came in. And so students talked about all of those things in my classes, and I'm really grateful to them that they shared their stories from their families as well.
Well, um, if someone carries one question with them after World Book Day, what would you hope they gently ask themselves the next time they open a book or decide not to?
That's a really good question. I mean,
Thank you.
I think that every listener, you will always find the right book for you at the right time. And so just ask, what's the next book? Like, what's the book that I need? And so for every listener, I think if you need inspiration, then ask, like, what's the next book that will help me connect with inspiration? If you need hope, ask, what's the next book that will help me connect with hope? If you need healing, ask, what's the next book that will help me connect with healing? Or whatever it is that you're working through, there's just this way in which people talk with me about this all the time. They're like, this book, it's exactly the book that I need right now. And I just found it, or so and so gave it to me, or I read about it, and then I got it at the library. And so I do have this feeling almost like books become our friends. They become companions while we need them, right? And then it might be that, like, someone gave me a book and I read it, and then I might give that book to somebody else because I'm like, oh, I think I know who needs this book next. And so
Yeah.
books are also really fun to pass on. I don't know if you have that in your neighborhood. My neighborhood it's called a little library, and people just give books away free. And so you can go out and put books there, but then whoever walks by can just come and take a book if they want as well. And people stock the little library with books for kids so that the kids in the neighborhood always have books if they want to have books. And
That's a
so that's a
brilliant
really
idea.
joyful thing as well. Yeah, it's really beautiful.
Oh, thank you so much, Swami Nityananda.
Wisdom, it's a joy to talk with you.
Where can listeners learn more about the work you do and also connect with you?
Sure. So I am at awakeyogameditation.org. And Awake Yoga Meditation is the name of our meditation center. It's in Baltimore, Maryland, in the United States. We welcome meditators, new meditators, longtime meditators, from all backgrounds, all walks of life. Our meditations are donation-based, and so anyone's welcome to join. And then you can email me at swami@awakeyogameditation.org.
Wow. I will put the links in the description so the listeners can just click and go directly to the site. Once again, thank you so much, Swami. It's been a pleasure chatting with you.
Much joy and gratitude to you, Wisdom, and to your listeners.
Yeah. That's it for today's episode of the Observeday podcast. Thank you for spending your time with us as we explore today's observance. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and share it with a friend who'd love to celebrate life's special days too. Don't forget to join the newsletter at observeday.com/join for more observance stories, tips, and updates. Until next time, keep finding meaning in every day.